WDS. As we can see here, we've got our fully prepped up roll ready to go, where we can look at install images, boot images, drivers and other items as well. But before we get onto that, what we need to do is configure the server itself. So I'm going to right click on the server name, which is already highlighted, and go to properties. Now, multiple tabs on here, several of which we don't need to touch, but the others of which are quite useful. There's nothing to touch on the general. If we go to the Pixie response, this controls what WDS is going to talk to. Now, this was already shown in as one of the pages when we installed the role, but you do get the option to change it if you made a mistake earlier on. By default, for us, what we want is that one at the bottom. That's going to allow new boxes taken out of a cardboard, put on the desk, and F12. That's going to allow them to work. The next tab, WDS, controls what the computer is going to be called and what the computer and the location for the computer to go to. Looking at the bottom bit first, by default, if we leave it just on the ready button it's on at the moment, it would go into the computers OU, unless another OU has been specified through Active Directory to say this is now your default home for computer accounts, which, if our servers have been set up right, should be all computers, in the root of all computers. If you want WDS to put machines somewhere else and then manually move them somewhere afterwards, for example, if you want to put them into an OU which has certain group policies applied to it, like apply certain driver updates to enable. We've had issues in the past whereby with Windows 7 we've needed to install a executable file to make the USB 3 drivers work on workstations. And what we did was we created a GPO and linked it just to a new OU, and then specified in here where to put those computers that were built by WDS, so they automatically got the right driver and the machine can then be picked up out of there and put elsewhere in the hierarchy. And we didn't want to put the USB 3 driver covering the whole hierarchy, because it would then try and install to lots of machines which didn't need it. So it's the most effective way of doing it. To be able to specify that, you want to click the bottom one on the following location. And if you browse, you can then browse through all of AD to wherever you want to go. Click your appropriate OU, say OK, right, fine, apply on that, and that's where it's going to put it from now on. At the top, the format, this controls how the computer name is going to be called. So, for example, if I wrote Bob there, that would call all machines Bob. However, if I did, I'm trying to remember, 03 hash, I think it is. If I did that, that would create the first machine to be called Bob 001 and the next one to be called Bob 002. There are lists of the different variables that you can use for that out on the web. Our standard format for doing it would be 12345 station percent 03 hash, I think it is. So the first one will be 12345 station 001, and then 002, and then 003, and onwards. And this isn't based on the number of times used WDS. It looks up in AD, works out the last one that's been used, and then just carries on from there. The next tab along controls the experience that happens at the client end. So with known clients, so known clients are machines that are already known to Active Directory, and we can specify these separate options. So do you always need somebody to press F12 to continue the Pixie boot? So when it says continue there, most machines, as you'll know, require a F12 as soon as you started the machine up in order to tell the system to boot from the network card, to do a PXE boot. As soon as that's been done, this is where these rules kick in. So if you press F12, it then grabs the DHCP release, and if left on here, we'll say, do you want to press F12 to continue the boot into Windows Deployment Services? You press that, it then shows you the boot images, and you go from there. The second one will not ask at all for a second F12. It will just take you straight to the boot image list. The one after that will always do it unless the user presses escape, as you can see, and the bottom one will never doing it. So that essentially says, right, for known clients, the things that are already built, never rebuild unless this is changed in here. And the same for unknown clients all the way through. By default, we want them both on the top. As an example of what can happen if you don't do it right, well, I'm sure Darren can tell you all about that, what would have happened if that would ticked and the BIOS was told to automatically boot from the network. The bottom section controls the default boot image, which the system is going to use. So you can tell it to automatically boot from a particular image if when you start up you're on a 32-bit or a 64-bit box, and likewise if you're on UEFI as well. We'll come back to this later. On the client section, this is where you can configure the unattend files for your boot images, not your installation images, only the boot images. And likewise, you can select for 32-bit and 64-bit and 32 and 64 UEFI as well. The DHCP controls the same options that we had when we set up the role, and after that, all the ones at the top, the multicast, the advanced, the network, and the TFTP, you should never need to touch. And that's the configuration done.